Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled you're here with us. You know, if you're preparing to step into a new professional environment, buying the right clothing can feel incredibly intimidating. It's totally normal to look at a rack of clothes, see wildly different price tags, and just kind of assume that the most expensive one has got to be the best. But today, we're going to completely flip that script. By the end of this explainer, you are going to walk away with literal X-ray vision. We're going to learn how to look right past those fancy brand names to spot a $30 garment that will actually outlast a $200 one, simply by understanding how it's built. Because here's the secret. Clothing isn't magic. It's just engineering, and you can absolutely master it.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the 4 fiber families. Second, wovens versus knits. Third, the 3 foundational weaves. 4, seams and stitching. 5, hardware and leather grades. And finally, number 6, we'll wrap up with the quality inspection checklist. So, part 1, the 4 fiber families. Let's start right at the foundation. Before clothing becomes a shirt or a pair of pants, it's just fabric, right? And before it's fabric, it's made up of individual microscopic threads called fibers. Every single garment you will ever touch falls into one of these 4 fiber families. First up, we have our animal fibers, like wool and silk. These are protein-based, which means they're incredibly warm, resilient, and they breathe well. Second are plant fibers, like cotton and linen. These are cellulose-based, they're cool to wear, super strong, and they actually get softer with use. Third, we have man-made cellulosics, like rayon and lyocell. These actually start out as natural wood pulp, but get chemically processed into fibers. And finally, synthetics, like polyester and nylon. These are essentially petroleum-based plastics. They are super cheap to make, and they don't really wrinkle. But the downside, they trap heat and completely lack natural breathability.
Let's zoom in on a really classic animal fiber, wool. If you look at wool under a microscope, it's not smooth at all. It's actually a crimped strand covered in tiny overlapping scales. And this is a totally crucial piece of engineering to understand for your wardrobe. Because of those microscopic scales, if you expose wool to heat, moisture, and agitation, like throwing it in a hot tumble dryer, those scales literally lock together permanently. It's a process called felting, and it's exactly what permanently shrinks your favorite sweater. This is why you must always wash your wool garments in cold water and let them air dry. Now contrast that with a plant fiber, like cotton. Microscopically, cotton acts a lot more like a flat, twisted ribbon. Notice there are no scales to lock together here. This flat ribbon structure makes cotton highly breathable, pulling moisture right away from your body. And because it doesn't have those scales, plant fibers don't felt or shrink up like wool. Instead, they actually soften and just feel better and better over years of wear and washing.
All right, part 2, wovens versus knits.
Now that we've got a handle on the microscopic fibers, let's transition to the structural level. How those individual fibers are actually put together to make cloth completely changes how the fabric is going to behave on your body. Basically, there are 2 main ways to construct cloth: weaving and knitting. Let's define the technical terms right away. Woven cloth is created on a loom using 2 sets of straight threads. The lengthwise threads are called the warp, and the crosswise threads are called the weft. They cross each other to make a really stable, tight grid. Knitted cloth, on the other hand, is completely different. It's made from a single, continuous yarn forming interlocking loops, just like a metal chain. Because it's a series of loops rather than a rigid grid, knitted fabric has that really comfortable, natural stretch you feel when you pull on a t-shirt. And this brilliantly illustrates a frustration we've all had: the shrinking t-shirt. Have you ever washed a brand new t-shirt and found it shrink dramatically in length, but not really in width? Well, here is the engineering reason why. During the manufacturing process, those lengthwise warp threads are pulled super tight and held under high tension. When you toss that t-shirt in the wash for the very first time, the water simply relaxes that tension. The loops spring right back to their natural state, and boom, your garment gets shorter. Moving right along to part 3, the 3 foundational weaves. When you're looking at professional dress, things like button-down shirts, slacks, and suits, you're primarily going to encounter 3 basic woven patterns. Take a moment to notice the distinct visual differences here. First is the plain weave. It's a simple, highly stable over-under checkerboard grid. This is exactly what your crisp professional dress shirts are made of. Next is the twill weave. See those parallel diagonal ridges? This weave is naturally stronger and hides stains beautifully. Finally, we have the satin weave. Here, the threads skip over multiple yarns to create long, smooth surface floats. That's what reflects the light and gives satin its lustrous sheen. Let's talk just a little bit more about that twill weave. Denim is probably the most famous example of a twill weave. Twill is incredibly sturdy.
When you buy a good pair of raw denim jeans or a heavy twill jacket, it usually starts out a little stiff, but over time the fabric actually adapts to the exact shape of your body. Think of it like a cast iron pan in a kitchen. A cast iron pan isn't perfectly nonstick on day one, right? It seasons and improves with continuous use. A high-quality twill garment does the exact same thing.
Part 4. Seams and stitching.
Okay, let's zoom out to the assembly level. You can have the absolute best fabric in the world, but if it's sewn together poorly, the garment is going to fall apart. Understanding how pieces of fabric are joined separates a piece of clothing that survives for years from one that fails in a month. Next time you're shopping, turn the clothes inside out to inspect the seams. One massive durability marker is the flat felled seam. This is where the raw edges of the fabric are literally folded over each other and sewn completely flat against the garment. Zero raw edges are exposed to fray. Just think of that thick, tough, clean seam running up the inside leg of a good pair of jeans. When you see this, you know for sure the garment was built for hard work.
Now, what's really interesting about this next one is how clever it is. It's called the French seam. This is a bit more delicate than the flat felt seam. It's a sewing technique where the seam is actually sewn twice to completely enclose the raw edge of the fabric inside a tiny, neat little pocket of thread. If you're looking at a fine dress shirt or a professional blouse, checking the inside for a French seam instantly tells you the maker actually cared about longevity and wasn't just trying to push a cheap product out the door.
Here are 3 more tailoring tells to keep an eye out for. First, stitch density, or stitches per inch. Always look for tiny, dense, evenly spaced stitches. Sparse stitching means they rush the job. Second, if you're looking at a blazer or a suit jacket, give the chest a feel. Good jackets use a floating, natural canvas inside to give it shape. Cheap jackets use a fused, glued lining that will eventually bubble up and ruin the jacket after just a few trips to the dry cleaner. And finally, look at the pockets and seams on a plaid or striped shirt. If the pattern matches up perfectly across the seam, the maker really took their time and didn't cut corners just to save a bit of fabric.
Part 5. Hardware and leather grades.
Now we get to cover the crucial finishing touches of professional dress, the fastenings on your clothes, and leather goods like belts and shoes. Believe it or not, buttons carry an incredible amount of quality information. Quality garments use buttons made of natural materials like mother-of-pearl shell or animal horn. Cheap garments use flat, uniform plastic. But don't just look at the button. Look at how it's attached. A well-sewn button has a shank. That's a little stem of thread wrapped around the base. This tiny thread stem gives the button room to sit properly and comfortably through thick fabric. It's a quiet but undeniable sign of a garment built to last. When it comes to buying professional shoes or a belt, you really need to understand leather. In a cross-section of an animal hide, the very top layer, where the hair used to be, is the tightest, strongest part of the skin. This top layer is called full-grain leather. It means the entire natural top layer is used fully intact. It is incredibly durable, and rather than just wearing out and looking old, it ages into a beautiful, rich patina over time. Here is the leather hierarchy you need to memorize. Full grain is the absolute best. Top grain is second best. It's still the top layer, but it's been sanded down to remove scars. Now pay close attention to this next one, the term genuine leather. It sounds great, right? But it's actually a super clever marketing trick. It often refers to the highly processed, much weaker lower layers of the hide. And finally, bonded leather. Honestly, this is basically chicken nugget leather. It's just shredded scraps glued together. It will peel, it will crack very quickly, and you should always avoid bonded leather. And that brings us to Part 6, the Quality Inspection Checklist. All right, it is time to bring all of this modular knowledge together into an actionable toolkit that you can take directly to the store with you. So, the crucial point is, you now have a 7-step checklist that no salesperson can ever fool. Let's run through it. 1. Check the label. Is it natural fiber or synthetic? 2. How does it actually feel in your hand? 3. Hold the fabric up to the light. If it blocks light, it's woven tightly and durably. 4. Look closely at those stitches per inch. 5. Check if the stripes or plaids align nicely at the seams. 6. Check the buttons for that thread shank. And 7. Rub a hidden area of the fabric. If it instantly starts to fuzz up and pill, leave it right there on the rack. As we said at the start, clothing isn't magic, it's learnable engineering. You now know how to inspect the microscopic fibers, the weaves, the seams, and the hardware. Armed with this new X-ray vision, you can step into literally any professional environment with absolute confidence, knowing you look the part. You are no longer at the mercy of a fancy label or a big brand name. So the next time you go shopping, I have to ask you, will you ever let a price tag dictate quality to you again? Thank you so much for joining me today. Use this knowledge and go build a wardrobe that works just as hard as you do.